Hi, mamas. Well, this is Vanessa Lane, founder of Mom Solo Project and host of the interview series, Too Good to Leave, Too Bad to Stay, Making the Best Decision for Your Family. And today we're welcoming and featuring the extraordinary Riana Milne, who is a certified global dating and relationship coach, a #1 best-selling author, the host of her own podcast, Alexis Daily Brief, and a global radio show. She has a great global radio show on boldbravemedia.com called Lessons in Life and Love. And she's an educational speaker, a certified trauma and addictions professional, and also a licensed mental health counselor for over 19 years in Palm Beach, Florida. Rihanna's free app Lessons in Life and Love on the Go offer many videos and articles, and her 5-star rated books, Love Beyond Your Dreams, Break Free of Toxic Relationships to Have the Love You Deserve, and Live Beyond Your Dreams, Live Beyond Your Dreams, From Fear and Doubt to Personal Power, Purpose, and Success, addresses life transitions, personal transformation, and relationships with yourself and others. Rihanna's Facebook fan page is Coach Riana Milne, and her websites are rianamilne.com and lessonsinlifeandlove.com.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in your work?
Well, sure. I have a triple master's in psychology and went about the traditional route of having my own private practice. But then I also worked in other jobs specifically around trauma because my specialty area is helping those with past childhood or love trauma. So I worked in a hospital center, adolescent, child and adolescent ward. I worked as a specialty counselor called a SAC, student assistance counselor, in the schools from grades kindergarten through college. I worked with women from the prison system. I worked with people in drug and alcohol centers. So everyone came from traumatic upbringings. And eventually, when I had a marriage to somebody that had what I call a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality, to the public, he was wonderful. He was wonderful in his job as a school principal and, very friendly and gregarious. His students loved him. So on the outside, socially, he was fabulous. Then he had a whole hidden life. And when that exploded on him, of course, it exploded in my life. And I stood up for myself and annulled the marriage as my own attorney. And that's very hard to do, to get an annulment, but I was able to get it. As the family judge said, he only granted one in 32 years, and mine was the second. And, as that relationship was broken up and he was leaving, he's there, I just don't know what's wrong with me. I sabotage everything I love. I don't get it. And I knew he wasn't bipolar and borderline. So I said, well, I'm going to figure it out because it was nothing I heard about in my triple master's program. So that's what started my research on this. And I discovered he did have childhood trauma. And from the people I worked with and his dynamic, I created the childhood trauma checklist. And then my clients found that their situations was wrapped around their childhood trauma. So I just started specializing in this area, loved it, and found that with my research, I could really help people heal from the trauma and move on to completely get it beyond themselves, heal it, and get on the transformation journey to emotionally healthy, evolved, and conscious love and the positive mindset for success. So I'm also a mindfulness counselor as well. So they're all integrated. I wear all those hats as a psychotherapist, the trauma professional, the life and love coach, and the mindfulness coach to create this transformation for my clients.
Yeah, well, and it's so intriguing, the topic, because when you think, I'm sure, all the people that are coming to view this program, this series, are coming to us with issues in their marriages, right? And they're trying to figure out, well, how much is their partner and how much is them? And, what can they do on their own? Or are there things that are just too big to solve, right? And
well, here's what the research shows. People of trauma attract people of trauma. So if one has it, usually the other one has it. And here's the other facts. 90% of people have childhood trauma. And the other facts are childhood trauma goes through at least 3 generations. So if you have it, so does mom and dad, and so did their mom and dad. And this is, all coming out and more research behind this topic, which makes it so fascinating. So most people would say, I had a pretty fair, normal childhood, some bumps in the road, no big deal. But when they hear my 10 items on the childhood trauma checklist, they're like, okay, yes, I did have some of these. And then how do they play out now as an adult? So that's what I do. I put the puzzle pieces together. I assess the severity level.
Mm-hmm.
We look at how they're coming out in their marriage or exclusive relationships, what the parent-child relationship is now in their family, because people who have come from toxic childhood usually are bringing the same dynamic. Again, it's going into a fourth generation, right?
Right.
So we have to stop those patterns. And every client that I work with that is a mom or a dad, we definitely redo parenting issues. We do reparenting and helping to heal that parent-child relationship.
And I'm sure that's a huge concern for all of us. One of the hardest decisions that we're making when we decide to end a marriage or not, or to stay, is, are we doing the best thing for the children? And we have to start by breaking the cycle, right? So
I can tell you it's much better to have one emotionally healthy parent raising the children than those kids being raised up in a toxic environment. That I can guarantee you.
Well, that's reassuring. It's not always, the easiest answer, but it's good to hear that. Can you talk about the 10 traumas that are experienced during childhood that would affect you later?
And I'm going to encourage the listeners to get paper and a pen to write these down, because they may want to meet with me about this later. And then I'll ask them how many of the traumas do they think they have. And the host usually likes to play along. So let's see how many you have, Vanessa. Here we go. As we talk about them, remember, this is not about blame or shame. We don't want to blame your mom and dad at this point, and we're not saying this to shame you or make you feel embarrassed in any way. It's all about a fact. Did any of this happen? And sometimes you have to really dig deep, because as I was doing this, I could see my partner had all this stuff. He actually had 9 out of the 10 traumas with a severity level of 7 to 10 out of a 1 to 10 scale on all of them. So, and then I said, well, I don't have any. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. And then I have this. And then, yes, I do have this. Mm-hmm. So studies show most people, 90% of people, have at least 1 to 3 on the list. Wow. So, and the other 10% are probably just don't even listen to it, or they're sociopath and don't admit to anything. So here we go. When you were little and young and innocent, did any of this occur for you? First one is addiction in either parent. So it could be drugs and alcohol, but there's many addictions, right? There's sex, meaning a chronic cheater of the family, porn, gambling, hoarding, spending, cheating, gaming, TV watching, and workaholism. So there's 11 addictions that could have affected the family. Next is verbal abuse. So you could have witnessed mom and dad yelling at each other, or you were the recipient of the yelling. Now, I identify, due to all my work in trauma, other things in the standard list, or the list from Kaiser Permanente group, which is a great list that identifies childhood trauma to later disease and illness in life. So mine are a little bit different. So not hearing the words "I love you," not if you not getting compliments or hearing verbal put downs, you're not good enough, or you'll amount to nothing, or you look dumb like that. Just verbal put downs constantly in your life is a form of abuse and could be traumatic. The next one is emotional abuse and neglect. Number 4 would be physical abuse, like beatings, sexual trauma, like rape or molestation of any kind. The next one is abandonment, and I identify 2 types: fault and no fault abandonment. And no fault abandonment would be if a parent dies early, or if they go off to war, okay, or if they travel a lot due to their job. And that was one I could finally identify with. It's like, yes, my dad was on the road all the time. We didn't know it. He was a CIA and FBI agent. My dad was like James Bond. But for the family, it was like, where's dad? And when's he coming home? And my mom would be, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, why don't you know? So he didn't tell us those things. So ironically, the husband I married, who had a secret life, so did my father, right? Okay, yeah. So this is all part of the childhood trauma dynamic. Okay, and then a fault abandonment would be if the father's never involved with the child's life, or if there is a divorce, the parent that leaves the house is never involved with that partner or the child, or it's a toxic relationship still over the years. But emotional abandonment, they just don't stay in touch with a child. The next one is if you're part of adoption, foster care, or needed to live in another household other than the main family home. So even grandma's home or back and forth to the aunts and the uncles because your parents weren't stable. That's all included there. Trauma number 7 is the most common trauma. This one goes back to not feeling good enough or worthy enough, not fitting in. So think about being bullied in school or not being picked for the sports team because you had asthma. So it could be you had a medical condition, diagnosed ADHD. I worked with all these kids in the school. So hearing their stories over and over again of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, not being one of the cool kids. This is very traumatic for them. Just feeling different, not fitting in. Number 8 is sibling trauma. Your sibling could have been born with a medical condition commanding more of mom's and dad's time. They could have been bullying you, or most often they are perceived by you to be the golden child. So in other words, more handsome or more beautiful, or more athletic. Something's going on where they get more mom and dad's accolades and attention. Mm-hmm. Trauma number 9 has 2 parts. The first part is community trauma. This is unfortunately our school shootings, our mass shootings, anything that affects a community in a global way. So this is also our natural disasters, floods, fires, hurricanes, volcanoes. Think how many communities are drastically affected every year. Now, of course, this is devastating for adults, but can you imagine the child mind that's not developed to handle such traumas? They're huge, right? These traumas are huge. Then family trauma would be growing up in lack, poverty, being in a dangerous neighborhood, moving, if you're a military family, every 2 to 4 years, needing to go into new schools all the time, losing your home by like the mortgage crises, having a parent incarcerated. These are all family traumas. And then the last one is thinking of that one, I worked in the schools and I was running the friendship group in an elementary school. I also did the anti-bullying campaigns and drug and alcohol campaigns. But the friendship group were all the bullies in the school. And there was 11 of them, and 10 of the 11 had an incarcerated parent. So they were angry, and ashamed and embarrassed. So they came in being the tough kids. And then the last one is number 10, trauma 10, is if your parent had a mental health issue. And a lot of the baby boomers, our parents didn't go to counseling, they weren't diagnosed. So 2 of the most difficult to live with is bipolar and borderline. Borderline I define as quick temper, very moody. You don't know what you're going to get because when they're good, they're great, but when they're bad, they're horrid. So a child around a parent like that is often very anxious. Mm-hmm. They want the love and attention of that person, but that's like a dad that could hug him 1 minute and then hit him in 2 minutes later, so you never know what you're going to get. And the bipolar is manic depressive. So depression can come out as anger, exhaustion, or just emotionally checking out. And the manic phase could be high and happy, but it often is tied around an addiction. So a gambling spree, spending spree, eating binge, something like that. Mm-hmm. So those are the 10 traumas that I identify on my childhood trauma checklist.
Wow. Yeah. And like you mentioned that your ex-husband, we had a severity, you said like of 7 to 10. So there's a range, right? There's a spectrum of, because some of these things I recognize and I think, of course you minimize it usually, right? But, was it that bad? Because I also don't want to invalidate somebody else's experience, which might have been more traumatic, right? Like,
correct. It's like if you remember a really bad spanking once and then versus a kid who's beat 3 times a week.
Yeah.
That's the severity level, or never hearing the words that you needed to feel validated throughout your whole childhood. That's a 9 or a 10, mm-hmm. Because you're left with that feeling of not feeling good enough. Yeah. So, or constant bullying or being bullied for many years in school, that feeling of not being good enough or not being, accepted stays in your soul and your psyche. And the research in trauma shows that the trauma does stay stored in the brain and the body cells for a long period of time. So we have to do certain things, my clients and I, to rid yourself of the trauma and then the mindset work to get beyond those fear-based negative thinking, catastrophizing, being held back, or feeling stuck in love. So anyone that's been through love trauma, which we're talking about with your couples today,
Right.
should I leave? How bad is it? I'm trying to hang in there for the kids. We heard that all the time growing up. Well, we're not divorcing for the kids. Well, we wish you did,
Yeah.
because the fighting was toxic for years, right? So, what's better for the child? What is better, the research shows, is one, emotionally healthy, stable parent
Mhm.
raising the two kids in a peaceful, loving, very loving environment.
Yeah. And yeah, for me, the big issue was I really wanted my children to have a model of healthy love. And that wasn't what I was able to provide in
Right.
my home. So,
And we can do the best we can, but if our partner's not willing to get help, I know a lot of times couples call me and say, well, my husband won't come, or a woman will call and say, can I come into couples counseling? Have I changed relationships like this? Yes, I have.
well, there are
Because
also people that will come and don't do it, that are like probably like your ex-husband and mine, that will come and say all the right things and go about their business and business as usual at
well, a
home.
really smart counselor can see right through these people that try
Yeah.
to sue us. Okay. And they usually don't come more than 2 sessions, and then they say something's wrong with a therapist.
Mm.
Or if they come to me, it's like, well, you're the 6th therapist we're trying. Well, I know right away, as soon as the therapist is on to the toxic partner, they don't want to go back. So
Mm-hmm.
what happens, I can work with the person that's trying to keep the family together, as I was saying, and get, let's say it's a woman, get her emotionally healthy. When she starts changing the dynamic for herself, how she's feeling, her confidence goes up, her self-esteem, she's parenting better, the kids are becoming healthier. Now, let's say the toxic partner is a man, because I work with LGBT clients too, but let's say he then becomes the odd one out. So psychologically, she's getting stronger, the kids are getting better, and he just doesn't feel he fits in. And then she may say, if you're not coming, I'm gone. We're
Mm-hmm.
gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when he knows she's serious. But you have to do something. If you do nothing, I loved Wayne Dwyer's quote, if you change nothing, nothing changes.
Yeah.
So if you just keep hanging in there and thinking he'll change this dynamic that's toxic without you doing anything, it's
Yeah.
not going to happen. You have to be very proactive and get help immediately for you, and then you and your kids, and then he usually joins in. I've seen that
Right.
a lot with my couples.
Yeah. That makes sense. And that's probably a really common pattern, right?
Yes, one of them is reluctant to come.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if somebody is thinking of leaving when they come to me, we will get a plan together. It's not like you just try to leave, especially if your husband's narcissistic, sociopathic. That can be a very dangerous situation, if they have a hot temper. So you
Yeah.
don't just leave, or, you just don't, I'm divorcing you. No, I actually had on my podcast 2 weeks ago, an attorney that specializes in helping women that have narcissistic husbands that they're divorcing. That's his specialty area. So, he knows he's attuned and I'm in tune, and we help our clients quite a bit. So you really need to have a safety plan for you and your children versus just blurting out what you're going to do.
Yeah. So it's a really good idea, regardless of whether or not your husband's on board, whether or not you are determined to save your marriage, to seek a professional to help you manage the process, right?
Yeah. Someone that's, what I'm talking about, you have to be specialized in trauma work.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people say I've gone to 6 or 7 counselors and they did not identify any of these traumas. And now I know what's going on with him, with us. And when I work with couples, I look at each individual's traumas and fix that for the individual first, as I'm teaching you new communications, a new form of empathy around what is going on. Because most couples are stuck in what we call the toxic cycle of trauma. Okay. And cheap drama with a D, cheap drama and trauma with a T. Okay. So, it's this, there's love and roses and making up because there's not going to be a divorce. And then about 10 days later, the toxic cycle starts happening again until one person can't take it. So it's a cycle constantly happening, making up, and then it gets bad again. So they're never getting to the underlying issues of what the problems are.
Well, and it's such a dilemma, because you love this person, usually you still love that person very much, and you can't seem to reach them, right? So it's hard to.
Well, the childhood trauma is very unconscious. And what happens, there's emotional triggers that come up. If you're hitting a sensitive area, that's from an unhealed wound that has never been healed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this is very important. When a couple comes to me, I have to work with them individually first, get to the bottom of each trauma. We acknowledge it, we examine it, then we get a different story around it, and we start healing that, and get them on a journey as they're learning new communications around what each other's sensitive parts are, where their traumas are.
So
they
they're
learn
triggering each other, and you're helping
they're triggering each other, and they don't understand. They take a lot of this personally, right? And it's not someone coming from a wound. So instead of taking it personally, they learn to say, are you being triggered by something? Can I help you? Or what's really going on for you? Why are you so upset?
Yeah.
So they learn a whole different communication language that nobody teaches anywhere. And it's all around the sensitivities of, past trauma. But then when they're healing it, it rarely comes up. But it is a process. I don't do individual sessions. It is, for couples, it's a 6-month program, because they have to learn so much and deprogram so much and relearn new and different ways of being individually and then with each other.
Great. And a lot of these strategies are in your book as well, right?
Yeah, Love Beyond Your Dreams has a lot of resources cut into it. Close to 300 different books are cited in there.
Wow.
And actually, chapter 5 is the chapter, Should I Go or Should I Stay? And it really clearly goes into, if this is happening, then it's worth saving. If this is happening, get out with a safety plan. Because I identify, the sociopath, and, it used to be 1 in 11 are sociopathic. Now they're saying 5 out of 11 people are sociopathic.
Wow.
And, it's just no remorse, very impulsive, doing what they want to do, without giving any kind of consideration to, would this hurt my partner? Like the chronic cheater, the chronic liar, the manipulation, using you for pleasure or profit is the definition of a sociopath.
And in those cases, that's never getting better. That's never going to change.
It's very rare for the sociopath to change. They are the ones that saying, nothing's wrong with me, it's all you, and they will never apologize for their grave misjustice towards you. They won't apologize. So those are people that have severity levels of many childhood traumas at a level of 9s and 10s, often have a secret life. Yes, very charming initially, right? So the relationship with the sociopath, I love the documentary Dirty John, because it was very accurate about what these marriages look like. Initially, very ideal, like, wow, he's the perfect partner. He's always writing me and texting me, bringing me gifts and making me feel so special, and helps out around with the house and the kids. And they look like the ideal partner. And this is why it's so tricky. But the research says 6 months into a year, when things become more serious, you're exclusive, engaged, married, or have a child, that's when other things start happening. So whether that's a secret life and they do what they want in the secret life, or the addictions start spiraling, the abusive words and actions start happening, it's usually when they think everything is sewed up and ready to go, that very often the sociopath will push for fast marriage as well. So don't take that as a compliment, take it as a red flag.
So that's really interesting, because a lot of women go in saying, I had no idea that he was like this, right? They see a very different person until, like, as you say, a little bit into the marriage after, or a committed relationship, right?
That's correct. I mean, they can wait till after the marriage till they totally change as well. So, and then when you go out back dating, here's the problem. Chemistry. Well, we were told to fall in love by the fairy tales, the movies, the romantic movies, the books, Sleeping Beauty. You wake up to the prince and you go off and you're happily ever after because he's handsome. Wrong. That's what I call the icing on the cake. We need the substance to hold up the icing. So the cake is the most important part, the interior, the character, the quality of that person you're dating. And it's really important that you date consciously, not that you just date because there's all this chemistry. Chemistry pulls you to the past dynamic. So your partner is usually a lot like the mom or dad that you grew up with. And that's what's considered normal. And your subconscious likes what's comfortable, even though it was toxic.
Yeah.
So chemistry comes like, oh, this feels so good. This feels so comfortable,
Well, and so many
and
people
that's the
equate
problem.
chemistry, that is love, right? Like that's what we've been taught. That is true love is chemistry,
Well,
right?
in America, especially with our fairy tales and movies, that's what we were taught. Yes.
Yeah.
But this is not, a good quality, emotionally healthy relationship.
So
So we,
the basis of a great relationship, can you talk about what qualities that we should be looking for?
yeah, that's section 4 in the book,
Okay.
and that's 50% of my coaching program, because 50% is life and trauma, and the other part is now let's get you into this emotionally healthy relationship. So if you're in one, the program's called Relationship Rescue. If you're
Mhm.
single, it's called Dating to Mating. And the singles really have to learn what to do so they do not repeat the pattern again. And
Right.
normally by
I can
the
see
time,
how this list would also be really helpful to people who are married to say, well, identify the qualities that are present in their husband and see, what is this a quality guy? Like, or was I just fooled by chemistry?
yeah, well, we don't go by chemistry. So my singles learn like the top 24 questions to ask on date 1 or 2, and they know immediately if there's childhood trauma number 1 and 2, if it's not healed, and they know. So they're dating with a whole new set of confidence and strategies, which we call
Yeah.
conscious dating. They are aware of what they're doing while they're dating, which really ups their chances to find an emotionally healthy guy. Because as I was saying, most people will come to me after 2 or 3 toxic relationships. And it's like, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
I don't get it, right? I'm
Right.
a pretty good person. Why do I keep attracting toxic people into my life? And that's what we have figured out.
Mhm.
So, and then when couples come to me, they have the toxic dynamics, and that this is the part of love that they learn to re-nurture, and they're re-educated about how to be a good partner.
Okay. So, Rihanna, can you tell us how, you've given us the list of traumas that are common for people and that they've experienced in varying degrees. How do those play out in adult relationships, in romantic
Okay.
relationships?
There's about 24 combinations that I've come up with, but some of the most common I'll name. With women, people pleasing is a big one.
Mhm.
So, example, a woman that grew up maybe with an alcoholic mother who was demanding and woke up with a hangover, she would learn, this child, to take care of her siblings, get them dressed, ready for school, out to the school bus, lunch is packed. She would overdo and please her mother because that's how she would receive love. And it became a normalized pattern. A lot of these things really become coping strategies when there is trauma within the home. So, people pleasing, when a couple comes to me, I'll hear the woman say, I love them so much. I do so much for them. Nobody does anything for me. My husband doesn't do anything. My kids don't do anything. And she's burnt out. She's angry. She's resentful. But she's overdoing so much because she learned this is how she's supposed to get love, and
Mhm.
she's not getting it. So that's a typical dynamic I see for women. Also, there's the people that are in repetitive dating patterns that are toxic. Things seem amazing in the beginning, but then jealousy and control will come up. Where does that come from? That comes mostly from trauma number 7, not feeling good enough. Not fitting in, not feeling worthy. So even though, let's say, your partner says, I do love you, I'm showing all these ways I love you, but you don't feel their love,
Mhm.
and then you get jealous over tiny little things, that's from not being good enough. Or also with verbal, not hearing the accolades of, you're beautiful, I'm so proud of you, those types of things. So jealousy and control can come from not feeling worthy. Um, Impulsivity can come from having a very demanding father, maybe coming from lack and never having what you wanted. So as an adult, you do what you want, you get what you want, and don't even think about your partner. It's impulsive. I want that. I didn't have it as a kid. I want it now. I'm an
Mhm.
adult. I should be able to have it. And people that are prone to serious affairs or serial affairs, going one after another when they're in the marriage, they don't think of their partner. They
Yeah.
don't care. They're self-centered, and it's like they want what they want. That's because they weren't given much as a child, or given a lot of nurturing and love, or they're not feeling good enough. So let's say there's a man that maybe had a high school diploma and he's with a woman that has a master's or a doctorate degree, and
Yeah.
he perceives her, oh, she's so much better than me. well, then he may go out and cheat with someone who's like a waitress or someone without a degree because she is like oogling all over him and makes him feel important. So
Mm.
he will cheat with someone who's not as higher educated as his wife because this lady makes him feel more important. You know, so this is someone, again, with that trauma number 7, I'm not good enough. So they'll go out and seek that from somebody else. Codependent relationships come from childhood trauma. Love addiction comes from abandonment. You know, so does codependency, you know, feelings of I can't handle it on my own. You know, if you're abandoned, you know, the love addiction, when somebody breaks up with you, you think about them 24/7, you know, or you want to text them or you want to call them all the time. Where does that impulse come from? Because you want the love so badly that even though it's toxic love, you hold on to something for far too long. So those are just a few examples of how childhood trauma really impacts these adult love relationships. It is at the core of toxic relationships going wrong.
Yeah. And then that's your work, right? Is helping people
Yes.
undo those patterns and those.
Exactly. Yes. We first recognize what the traumas are, then we undo the patterns. They go from unconscious awareness because they're unconscious emotional triggers, right? And then we get them strong, mind, body, spirit, make them consciously aware. So if something's triggered, they know how to fix it in their mind. And they know how to soothe themselves. We lower the anxiety. I do vitamin therapy, meditation, because we have fixed them holistically. There's no psychotropic drugs that are prescribed. And if they come to me on drugs, they're off them within 2 weeks. So we do everything naturally and with the strength of the mind-body connection.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, but can't wait to dig into more. But thank you so much for your time and the free gifts that we're looking forward to. Yeah.